With an almighty splash, the soldier and his boat were swept out of the gutter and into the drain. The water rat watched in amazement as he saw the little paper boat and its passenger disappearing into the opening of the drain. Empty bottles and cans that were more than twice his size followed the little soldier on his terrifying journey. The little paper boat travelled on through the drain until it emptied out into a big canal. Imagine a little tin soldier lost in a canal. It would be just as terrifying for us if we were lost in one of the vast oceans of the world. The boat spun round several times until it was full to the brim with water. By now, the tin soldier could only just keep his head above water, but he still kept completely upright. This boat is going to sink. I just know it, and there's nothing I can do about it, he thought. And just as he'd feared, the boat sank deeper and deeper into the water, and the newspaper became more and more sodden. Eventually, the water gushed right over the tin soldier's head. While this was happening, all he could think of was the beautiful little ballerina. Oh, how he wished he could see her face again. After this, the paper boat fell apart and the tin soldier fell straight through the bottom. As soon as he had parted from the boat, he was swallowed by a great big fish. It was so dark inside its belly, but the tin soldier stood perfectly still with his rifle tightly at his side, although he was now lying lengthways. The fish twisted and turned so much that the tin soldier didn't know what was going on. "When will this ever end?" the tin soldier said to himself. Then, suddenly, all the terrifying twists and turns stopped, and the fish lay quite still. A flash of lightning seemed to pass right through the fish, and suddenly the soldier could see daylight again. Somebody called out, "It's a tin soldier!" The fish had been caught, taken to market, and sold. A servant took it home to the kitchen, where she slit it open with a big sharp knife. The servant was so surprised when she saw the soldier and the fish that she gently picked him up by the waist and took him to the room where supper was being served. Everybody stared at this amazing little man, as the servant told them that he had been travelling inside a fish. "What's all the fuss about?" he thought. "I haven't done anything special." They stood the tin soldier on the table, and what a wonderful sight met his eyes. He was in exactly the same room as he'd been in before. He recognized the same little boy. The same toys were on the table. And most wonderful of all, the lovely paper castle with its pretty little ballerina stood straight in front of him. Still, the little ballerina stood with her arms stretched out above her head and one leg raised high in the air. She looked as if she had been waiting patiently for him to return. This touched the heart of the little tin soldier. He felt he could weep tin tears, but he knew that that was not the proper thing for a soldier in uniform to do. He looked at her, and she looked at him, but they didn't say a single word. The boy stood him under one of the paper trees so that he was closer to her, but still they didn't say a single word to each other. The little tin soldier wanted to ask her to be his wife, but he still felt she was too grand for him, so he just looked on. Although not a word passed between them, all the other toys were happy to see them standing together. Except for the Jack-in-the-Box, of course, who didn't wish good fortune on anybody. He was too busy whispering into the ear of the little boy. "Throw that good-for-nothing soldier into the stove," he said. "He can't fight battles for you with only one leg." The little boy was frightened of the Jack-in-the-Box, so he did as he was told, and threw the poor little soldier straight into the blazing stove.
Useless soldier.
As the tin soldier stood in the heat of the fire, he soon became incredibly hot. The poor little soldier didn't know if it was the heat of the flames that was making him feel like this, or the heat of his love for the ballerina. Soon, the bright red, white, and blue of his uniform started to fade away. Nobody knew whether the color had faded because of the heat or because he was so sad. He could still see the little ballerina with her arms reaching towards him, and as he looked at her, she looked at him. In the intense heat, he started to melt, but he still stood brave and upright with his rifle at his side. Then, a gust of wind blew in through the window. It caught the ballerina, and she flew into the stove with the little tin soldier. For a few brief moments, they looked at each other as the red and yellow flames danced around them. Although not a word was spoken, it didn't matter, because they were united forever in love. A few minutes later, they both burst into flames and completely vanished. The next morning, when the maid was clearing out the ashes in the stove, she found all that was left of the little tin soldier, a little lump of tin in the shape of a heart. Next to it lay the big red rose that the ballerina had worn, burnt black as a piece of coal.